That sounds perfect to me. So, all right, I'll start by sharing my screen. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today. My name is Samantha, and I work as the Western Classroom Success Lead that supports school divisions whenever they implement Edwin within their school division. And so I come from a background of teaching myself. I actually taught senior level English for a number of years. And my job is to just support teachers across Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, the Yukon, and the Northwest Territories just so they feel like they're comfortable in navigating Edwin. They know how to find things in a very time effective way, because we know that's always the most valuable resource that exists in teaching, and that you have the skills that you need to find content that's aligned to the new Alberta curriculum, which is probably the most important thing on your minds today. So I'll dive right in. There's going to be two preliminary things that I show you right off the hop of strategies I use when I first went into Edwin, and then six core strategies for you to take away from today. Starting with when you first log in, if you have never logged in before, you'll have to use your credentials from ECSD once, and then you'll never have to do this again anytime you go into Edwin or just have it bookmarked like I do at the top. It'll bring you right to this open screen, and you won't have to plug in your information each time. But the first thing I actually tell people to do is make sure you find a Zoom that feels good to you whenever you're navigating Edwin. I actually find it oddly close as its default settings. So I'm a 65, 67% type of girl because I like it a little bit more zoomed out. For the purposes of today, I'll keep it a little more closely zoomed in so we can see what I'm talking about. But just make sure if at any point in time it's not comfortable to you for a viewpoint, that you adjust this. And then again, same thing, when you do it once, each time you come into Edwin, it'll default to those same Zoom settings. The second housekeeping item that I like to make sure folks know is when you log in the very first time, it's going to ask you what province and what grade level you teach, but you're actually able to edit this at any point in time using the pencil icon under My Subjects, which again, all I did was I went over into my library, subjects, and the pencil icon. And the reason this is super important is for the purpose of differentiation. If I am a core homeroom grade 5 teacher, it's really important, and I advocate that you set up your library in this exact way of having grades 4 and grade 6 a part of your library for the purposes of differentiation. That way, if you need to reach up into curricular content in grade 6 for your high level learners, or you need to reach down and grab content from grade 4 for remedial support, you're able to do that at any point in time. So you have access to these resources. You might as well use them and use as many as you can in full to support your learners through differentiation in that way. So this is what my library then looks like, is I have English language arts, math, science, and some social studies, which is what you'll see in your libraries as well. And the whole concept of Edwin is that if I was, let's say, a brand new teacher teaching grade 5 ELA for the very first time, I could come into this unit of study, and there's always going to be two columns under any grade level you select in Edwin. There's a table of contents and curated collections. The table of contents in theory could be taught from top to bottom at the start of the year all the way through the end of the year. And you would be rest assured that you are teaching the curricular requirements of the province in full. Because every single resource within these units, if we just view all for a second, is always linked to a curricular connection. And so we have everything down to the cusp level is linked here. And so you know exactly which curricular outcome it is that you're achieving by teaching this opener. And you also know which knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures are being taught as well. So super important. One more time, I just randomly opened up an ELA resource in grade 5. I went into an entire unit and I opened up the ellipses over here and opened up the I to get that full curricular information. And so that's how Edwin is set up, is it's essentially a huge data bank and ecosystem full of resources for you to explore, all of which are aligned directly to the new Alberta curriculum. So let's jump into something different. I'll go into grade 5 math, for example. We have lots of new content that's just being released to align with the new curriculum that was just implemented. And if I go into, let's say, place value, I'll open up representing numbers. This is what a typical Edwin resource looks like. You're going to have what we call a three-part lesson: engage, explore, connect, and reflect. I love this structure, by the way, because as a teacher coming from that world myself, we know that rote memorization is like the most shallow form of learning. If you think about things like Bloom's taxonomy, where anytime we can move them up the hierarchy into, say, analysis, or if we can get students thinking about how what they're learning connects to themselves and the world around them, that's where we get into those higher levels of thinking and higher levels of memorization and learning takes place. And even in math, that's how they're set up, is for this connect and reflect to be very much, can you state for me why 2 is bigger than 4? It's a word and an analysis kind of question, not always just can you pick which one is the correct answer, right? Like, express this number using words. And so you'll see that a lot in Edwin, where there's multiple ways of thinking and strategies that move kids up the hierarchy of relating what it is they're learning back to themselves. So I love connect and reflects. There's a handful of other things you'll see here too, though. So at the top of each resource, I want to walk you through this right-hand side bar, because this is where the gold is located, in my opinion, starting with this little guy, Educator Tools. So this contains a lot of good information. The same I button I showed you before that contains those curricular connections right down to the cusp level oftentimes. The cusps are found here as well. So this is a bit of a fuller PDF that showcases a big chart full of those cusp connections. So they're always just located for teachers there at any point in time. And we also have teacher notes. And what happens when I toggle this on is the resource is actually going to expand, because we're going to have a bunch of this teal information pop up. So I'll just toggle it off so you can see. You get the idea. And this teal information is teacher directed. So it's going to contain everything from prerequisite information of, if your learners don't know this, don't do this resource, because they should have this prerequisite knowledge in place first before you go and teach this. Prep, suggested timing. I've seen things like differentiation tactics, any sort of answer key if you have questions, especially in math, but that's really important, will populate once you toggle those teacher notes on. Yeah, here's some formative assessment, differentiation tactics, accommodations. So you get the idea. Supportive learning. So this is really a place for educators to go once they've selected a resource. You've opened something up, you've went, oh yeah, I for sure want to teach this on Tuesday. The next step I would always do after that is opening up Educator Tools and seeing what other information exists there for you. The other place I would go right off the hop is related resources. For this exact reason is oftentimes you'll find downloadable PDFs and doc formats and documents that you can print off in preparation for teaching this with your kids. And so when you, for example, go through thousands, ones, and millions, there's going to be accompanying materials that you can print off 25 or 30 of them and have them ready with your kids and guide them through the instructions that those activities give as you're projecting this at the front of the board and teaching it. Alternatively, if you're lucky to have a 1-to-1 device ratio, or you have a laptop card and want your kiddos to open this exact resource up on their own computer, they're able to do that as well. And how else I've seen Edwin be used in really beneficial ways is by inviting your students to come up on the board and help you demonstrate different concepts. So you can get your students to come up and say, can you please drag the 6 column wherever you think it should be here? And so you'll see, and the biggest thing, I guess, to point out about Edwin is we're often compared as being akin to a digital textbook, which is true in some aspects, but it does a disservice because it's more than just that. It's an interactive tool that provides really meaningful experiences for students to participate in the learning. It provides things like related resources that teachers have access to in conjunction to digital materials. And it has a way of moving kids, I guess, up that hierarchy to higher level thinking skills by asking them to relate what it is they're learning to themselves and the world around them. All right, little break there. I'll pause for a moment and just see if I invite you at any point in time as well. If you have questions, things you're curious about, please be typing that in the chat and there'll be time at the end for questions as well. The other thing I guess I want to show you as we move along here is something called self-checks. And so if you, for example, taught this resource on a Friday and your grade 6 students, you maybe got most of the way through, you started working on the connect and reflect questions, the bell rang, it dismissed, they were released for the weekend. What you can do is actually assign this resource home, not for the purposes of even necessarily giving them homework directly, but for the purpose of sharing this to your Google Classroom, assigning it as a assignment that they have to complete, and telling them, I just want you to go into this resource over the weekend on your own time and respond to these self-check questions. Did you understand everything that I taught on Friday with complete accuracy? Or were you distracted? There was a lot going on. It was Friday and none of us in the class are getting it. And you can ask each learner to go in and do that and provide a self-check response. Now, why would you do this? What is the power behind that? What you can do is through a dashboard, you'll eventually be able to aggregate data that looks like this. And I always make the joke, for some reason, we're in an alternative universe where we only have like 7 kids in the class, which we know never exists. But let's say for theory's sake, it does. You could go in and scan and say, okay, yeah, I'm seeing that my learners are mostly getting it, but ooh, Noah Scott, he's got a lot of red there. What's going on? Which learning outcomes is he just not understanding? And so I can scroll through this and at a glance, basically understand, okay, yeah, static electricity is one that's causing problems. He seems to be getting some sort of social studies concept though, medieval England and ancient Rome. That's okay. Oh, but this one, he cannot describe transfer of charge. And I can go into that and say, okay, so this is the one that we need to review. This is especially important around parent-teacher interview times. Oops, let me just go back to this one. Especially relevant during things like parent-teacher interviews, where you can open up this dashboard with mom and dad and scroll through together and say, oh, I'll actually just assign this one home with you today so that you guys can review this at home. Same thing with similarities and differences, life is similarities and differences. It'll link directly to the outcome that that student was struggling with. You can copy the link, assign it home through Google Classroom or Microsoft Teams if that's how you connect and respond with parents the best. But at any point in time, these resources can be shared as long as a student has been invited into that space as well. And I'll show you how to do that in a second here with under dashboards as well. So I've seen the power of how self-checks can be used as a really valuable tool for formative assessment. If you know, for example, that most of your learners are struggling with something on Friday, and you automatically can see that through your dashboard, it might even inform your future teaching instruction of, okay, yeah, we really need to go back and review that on Monday because my kiddos told me over the weekend and they self-checked that they're not understanding what it is that we taught. So I just like to bring that up as a really powerful way to take data and then use it for effective reasons. Now, with the very first time you create a dashboard, you'll give it a name. I'll just do a test one for today. As you can see, I've done so before. And I can select, I'm a grade 5 teacher, teaching grade 5 across the board in all subject areas, done. And it'll give you a screen that looks like this. And what this does is gives you either a class link that you can distribute out to your students, and this links directly to their Google Classroom and invites them to be a member of your dashboard within Edwin. Or alternatively, if you had a one-to-one device ratio and each kid had a laptop out in front of them, you could just project this on the board and say, please open up your Google Classroom, plug in this class code so that everyone gets into our dashboard. And they will appear as members as soon as they successfully do that. And from there, that's where you can collect things like responses through your self-checks and assessments, things like that. It's a very powerful tool as soon as you get them into a dashboard. And yeah, ultimately, it just looks something like this, where you'll be able to see all your members, see all their formative self-checks, and see just like an average average score of how it is that they're doing in your class. The very last thing I'd like to showcase is collections. So I like to consider dashboards as being reflective of your entire class. It is the digital space that you can bring kids into to share resources, collect self-checks, and project resources for both students to access and yourself as a teacher to teach to. Collections are more like your teaching binder. So whatever, I guess, organizational structure you have for yourself in the physical world, whether that is organizing your resources week by week, maybe it's month by month or unit by unit, however it makes most sense. I've seen some teachers have and set up collections in Edwin that are literally time blocked by the week. And so we'll have one March 12th to 18th is one of their collections in Edwin, and they'll pre-set up and pre-populate one of those for every week of the year. And then they can place each resource that they want to teach into the appropriate week, and they'll be super organized in Edwin in that way. I've seen some just set it up like this where they have January. That's it. They just have monthly blocks that they place the materials in Edwin that they'd like to teach and keep it organized like that. Some just have homeroom 6. Everything that they want to teach for a certain group of kids goes into one area, or ELA 7-8, for example. Some set up a favorites category right away. There's, I guess, the long and short of it is there's no correct or wrong way to set up collections. The thing I always advocate for is just any way you're already organizing your information in a physical binder. If you can emulate that in the digital space, that's probably the most advantageous for you. So what this means is you can take any lesson it is that you find in your library and be able to place it into those units. So say you find something and you're like, oh yeah, I really want to teach this next week. You're actually able to save it to whatever collection you want. And so if you already have those folders per se set up and you have those organized week by week, you could place this into the correct week that you would like to teach it, or vice versa, if it's the correct month you want to teach it. However you want to organize that is up to you. But that's a really strong organizational tip for how to take resources that you're finding and placing them into your collections so that you can stay organized throughout the year. Last but not least is how to search for resources in ways that aren't just curated through the table of contents for, say, grade 4 math, for example. Another way to search for things that you want is, actually, there's 2 ways, but the first of that is to browse by curriculum. So you can literally search for things down to the cusp level. Learning outcomes. Science is maybe a better example of this because I think it does go all the way down. Browse by curriculum. There we go. So you have your cusps and then your learning outcomes as well, and that exists for all of the different units of study. So you can choose a certain outcome, search by it, and you can see the things that are populated in Edwin that directly align to that learning object. And the other way is to search just by using the generic search button that functions very similar to how a Google search would. So if it's like weather, for example, you can search it. And the power of this, and the best way I've seen this used, is this column on the left side area here allows you to search for those cross-curricular connections. So if you're a grade 6 teacher and you teach science in this period, but then you know you have ELA next period, you could say, okay, I'm going to teach this resource to cover both bases and be able to start searching for connections in really meaningful ways. You know that there's 15 things in grade 5 science that relate to the weather. You know at a glance that there's 8 things in grade 6 that relate to the weather. So if you're a split level teacher, that's really important. You'll know that if you're teaching social studies, there's something in there that relates to social studies about the weather. You can see how this is a powerful tool is what I'm getting at, is you can see at a very broad sense how a concept like weather also talks to other subject areas that exist within Edwin. All right, I'll go back to home. I'll stop sharing for a moment. And this would be the time for me to just pause, stop talking a mile a minute, see if there's any questions, and see if there's anything you'd like me to swing back, go into again, demo again, or if there's any other questions that I can clear up here. So I'll pause for a moment. If not, I have 3 pieces of advice to leave you with. The first one is to find at least one thing that you like in Edwin that resonates with you, that aligns with your teaching style, that it is that you could teach either later on this week or next week with your students. Number 2 is to organize your collections in a way that's meaningful for you and can keep you organized as you start exploring and curating what it is that you want to teach within Edwin. And number 3 is to create a dashboard and have the ability to invite students into that space. Whether or not it's for a one-to-one device ratio, that doesn't matter, but at least you'll have the ability to assign them resources home if you know it's something they're struggling with. You have the ability to at least collect formative self-checks if that's something you find valuable. And you'll be able to teach that information a lot more effectively if you know that your students are struggling in a certain concept. So find something you love, collections, dashboards. That'll put you in a pretty good place to have a strong foundation in Edwin moving forward. And from there, I think we're ready to wrap it up.
Great. Thank you so much, Sam, and thanks for being available for any questions that anyone has. We appreciate it.
Easy. I'll put my email in the chat as well. At any
Thank
point in
you.
time, if questions come up, please do reach out. That's why we're here. And I hope you have fun exploring in Edwin. It's such a good tool for finding curriculum aligned resources. So go in, have fun, and reach out at any point in time if questions arise.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Just curious if the recording is going to be shared with us.
I definitely can. Yeah, I'm recording it right now, so I'll stop the recording.